All right. I think most people are in here, so we'll go ahead and get started. I think most of you were in yesterday's session with a few newer people to this session. Just want to reiterate that the format of the Lunch and Learns, the first half will just mainly be me showing you the new feature that we're discussing today, and then the last half will open up for just a simple question and answer session. The other thing I didn't mention yesterday, but I wanted to mention today, all of these Lunch and Learn sessions that we're doing, we're recording. We're putting them on our website. They're underneath the Support tab. When you log in, if you go down to Video Tutorials, they're located under ProjectPAK. So if you have to get in late into a session or just want to view it again, you can go there and watch it. And since all of you are using GoToMeeting, you already have the correct codec on your computer, so you'll be able to watch it back in Windows Media Player or whatever media player you use. So those will be available for you at any time. Today's session, we're going to go over the miscellaneous delivery and installation charges calculator. Basically what it is that a lot of customers that I've talked to like to calculate, we call them miscellaneous charges, but they're really just extra delivery and install charges, such as like a per diem, hotel charge, or travel charges, or even a fuel charge. And instead of having to use global formulas or some of the other different methods of creating them that end up becoming more convoluted and a little more complicated than they should be, in 7.0 we created what we call our miscellaneous delivery and installation calculator, so that you can easily calculate those charges and see them in front of you. And the beauty of the system is that you can calculate them at the base bid node, and then you can actually calculate a separate one for each change order if you need to. So if the change order happens to be large enough that maybe it's going to require extra travel time or what have you, then you can set up a separate calculator, so to speak, from what you did on the base bid. All of this, all of the miscellaneous delivery and installation charges, they're all set up based on using the cost types. Some of you saw it yesterday. There's a new feature inside ProjectPAK that we created that you set up on each library item. So since we're talking about miscellaneous delivery and install, I'll just go to our my install labor section, which would be the bulk of it, although there can also be materials associated. If I open up labor installation, over on the right in the library is this new drop-down we call cost type. And these are all this is a hard-coded list and they're built in, but for the most part, they should cover most of the facets of cost type. But the two main ones, at least for today's session, that you want to focus on is installation and delivery. Because anything that you flag as a cost type of installation and delivery will get included in the calculator, so that you can see what your installation costs and delivery costs are, as well as when you add in these miscellaneous ones on top of it. And then, as you'll see at the very end, you can actually see it broken out on a document fairly easily too. So any labor or materials that are associated with delivery and installation, it would be up to you to go into the library and assign them appropriately, and just like you would any other cost types. So once you have those assigned, down at the bottom, there's a cost types tab, which you can easily see a breakout for installation and delivery, which it's wherever it's located at in your estimate too. And mine, I happen to have a separate summary node for each, but you could have them buried inside each assembly if you wanted to. It's smart enough, it goes through and finds every row with that particular cost type on it and sums it up. All right. Just like most things, inside ProjectPAK, there is, on the global options for estimates, there's a new tab called Delivery and Installation. And this is where you can set up your defaults. Just like you set up your default overhead percentages and profit, here we're going to set up defaults that you would typically use for each and every estimate. So up at the top, you can see distance to site. Obviously, you probably wouldn't fill in because it would be different. If you're going to calculate fuel charges or travel time charges, you need to fill in your driving speed and your unit fuel costs. And then as we kind of come down through this, these are the different miscellaneous charges that you can calculate. You can calculate a per diem. You can set up your cost. Keep in mind, too, everything you type in here is a cost. The first go around, the way we designed it, this is all based on cost. No profit and overhead will be added, so you have to build it in yourself. In version 7.1, which we'll be releasing in 30 to 60 days from now, you'll be able to add in a particular overhead and profit. Just the first go around, that's as we designed it. We designed it by cost, but from feedback we've gotten from different customers, we're going to switch it so you can add in profit and overhead so that what you're putting in here is a true cost. For now, you just have to build in your profit and overhead. And on a calc per diem, you put in $30. In the second box where it says at, you can set a mileage. So in other words, maybe in my business for delivery, maybe I put in 90 miles because anything underneath 90 miles, the per diem is not calculated, whether it's checked or not. But once it's over 90 miles, it kicks in. So it's a way to set a threshold for per diem if that's how your business works. If you don't have any kind of thresholds, you can just leave it at 0. And then whenever you check calc per diem, it's always going to kick in. And this is per diem is per day per man. So if you have 2 men, it would be $60. With just 1, it's 30, as you'll see here in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck this since it's a global, because maybe by default I don't have per diems. It just depends. But you'll still remember the $30. Same difference if you were doing travel time charges. Maybe mine's $50 an hour, I figure. But I'm going to uncheck it so any new estimates I create, it's not already checked.
Hey, Dave. We cannot hear you. Dave? Hello, Dave?
He's doing a good job, though.
Person's funny.
What's the mic? What, another speaker, just a mic.
Can somebody else be Dave? can only see, not hear. Does anybody have his email? All right.
After hours, so you can add a certain percentage into the unit cost for that as well.
Hey, Dave.
So this is basically all your miscellaneous charges, and we're just setting up your global settings, so any new estimate you create, these numbers will flow in.
Dave, can you hear us?
So once we have our global set up, just to take a step back to show you, for those of you that weren't here yesterday, if you go to the General tab, and we go over here to the Custom Column Define button,
Dave.
down at the bottom, this is where you can map your width, depth, and height to whichever columns, whatever names they are in your system, so that it'll automatically calculate cubic space for each assembly. Or like I said, if you don't use parametric estimating, and it's a little bit more simpler, maybe you don't use attributes at all, you also have the ability, whether it's an assembly or it's a library item of the type item. If I scroll away to the right, there's a new column called cubic space. And if I expand this, I go inside here and just click on a product. If you don't have it set up to automatically type it in, you could just type in the cubic space here yourself, or you can do it for library items too. As long as you do that, as you can see, it aggregates it up for each summary node. And then ultimately, all the way out to the base bit itself, to the job as a whole, in this case, 1,468. So,
Hey, Dave.
anyhow, moving on. Once you get it set up globally,
Hey, Dave.
sorry, I'm just now looking at the chat. It looks like none of you can hear me.
We can hear you in New York.
Lost my audio. That's not good.
Hello, Dave.
Can everybody still hear me?
I can hear you in New York, but there's quite a few that can't.
I can hear you in Chicago. Hello, Dave. Are you there?
Yeah, that's interesting because, yeah, I'm glad you can hear me, but I can't hear you. I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm going to go ahead and hang up and call right back in, and hopefully that'll fix the audio problem. That way we can all hear each other, hopefully the whole time. So I'm going to go ahead and hang up and call back in, and hopefully that will fix it real quick. So give me just a second.
Dave said he's going to call back in, and hopefully that'll fix the situation for those who can't hear him but would like to.
Thank you. Bless you.
Hey, is anyone here actually updated to this version yet?
I have.
Yes, I am.
Is Dave at
Everything
TradeSoft again?
We can hear you.
Good. I can hear most of you now, so I apologize about that.
We lost
I
pretty much the bottom half of the job costing at the global setting area.
Okay. All right, then. We'll jump back to where we were at then.
PM level.
All right. Hopefully, with any luck, we won't have any more audio problems. So back at the global level, as you can kind of see, the miscellaneous charges for installation are very similar than they were for delivery, with a few exceptions. One of the exceptions is with the hotel. You can set a threshold for mileage if you want to. So if you don't want it to kick in until they're 100 miles away, you could simply type in 100 miles here. Or you can leave it at 0 if you don't want a threshold. The other difference, too, is on calc fuel charge. You can do it the same as you did for delivery if they're using a company vehicle, or if they happen to be using their own vehicle. You can check that and then type in what your reimbursement is. That way it calculates it in. And then the two added extras are prevailing wage and after hours. And it simply allows you to add a percentage to the unit cost. So if any of you have ever used adjusted unit cost on your estimate sheet, which is a simple way of overriding a library item's price without changing the library item, that's in essence what we're doing here. So if your library price for, let's say, installation was $20 an hour, if you had a prevailing wage job or after hours, or both for that matter, you could click yes and type in, if you wanted it to be $40, you could add 100% to the unit cost. It's still going to tack on overhead and profit if you calculate it on those line types. It's just changing the unit cost before it calculates overhead and profit. All right. Once you have your global settings set up, these are just going to copy into any new estimate you create. And then, just like most other options on a per estimate basis, you can change them to your heart's content. The other part you probably lost is for those of you that weren't here yesterday, for the part that calculates the number of trips, if you go to the General tab and you click the Custom Column Define down at the bottom, this is where you can set up your cubic space calculations. If you're using a more parametric approach to estimating, you just map your width, depth, and height to the appropriate column so it'll calculate the cubic space for you. If, however, you don't use that type of estimating, and maybe it's more simple, as long as it's of a library item that's of the type item, you can simply just type in the cubic space if you want, or you can do it on each and every assembly if you need to. And the columns out here, usually to the far right, there's one for cubic space. Mine's set up to automatically calculate, but if it wasn't, I could simply type in the numbers and then it aggregates it up per summary node and then ultimately for the entire job. So that within our little miscellaneous cost calculator, it can automatically calculate the number of trips you need to make based upon the size of your truck, or at least it gets you in the ballpark. Because hopefully you heard me earlier, the number of trips you can set on automatic, so it'll calculate it based on that, but you can always change it to manual, because there may be times where you think, just looking at it, nah, maybe it's going to take 3 trips instead of 2. Once you have the global options set up on a per estimate basis, just like you change most of your estimate settings, there's a similar tab called Delivery and Install, and this is how you can set it up specific to this estimate. So for this particular estimate, maybe the job's 75 miles away. Just leave the driving speed and fuel costs the same for now. And now I can decide, how many of each delivery and installation that I want to figure in. So maybe in this case, I want to figure 2 men at 8 hours a day. And maybe this time I only want to figure travel time charges and a fuel charge. As you can see, I used the auto and I overwrote what my global was. If I didn't, it would have just flowed in with the 900. So it's completely up to you, like I said, or you can leave it at manual and figure out the number of trips yourself. And then for installation, maybe on this one I just want to use 2 guys. Maybe they're 10 hours a day. Do a calc for DM, travel time charge, and a fuel charge. And so once I have those set up, click OK like normal. And now you can actually calculate the charges. And you simply calculate them. I'm just going to collapse this so it's simpler to see. You just go to the base bid, right-click it, and go down to miscellaneous install and delivery charges. And then this is where it pops up inside our miscellaneous cost calculator. And this is where you can actually see the true charges. I said it at the beginning, but I know we have an audio problem, so I'll just repeat it in case it didn't come through. Everything inside here is based on a cost. There is no profit and overhead, so you have to build it in yourself, because this is how we designed it this first go-around. However, from some feedback we've gotten from customers, this will be changing in 7.1, which we should be able to release in 30 to 60 days is what I'm told, and we should hit that mark pretty easily, because we don't want it to take too long, obviously. But in the next version, in 7.1, you'll actually have an overhead and a profit amount that you could type in separately for delivery and installation miscellaneous costs, so that you can truly put in your costs here and then have profit and overhead calculated correctly, like the rest of your estimate does. Unfortunately, this go-around, it is cost. So like I said, if your calc per diem is $25 and you typically put overhead and profit on that, maybe it came out to 35 or 40, you'd want to type in 40 here so that it would be realistic within your quote. Inside here, if we just focus on the delivery section first, you can see that since I selected calc travel time charges and I put in how many men and hours a day, down here it's going to calculate my travel time charges at $545.45. And out to the right, it's going to tell you it's based on this number of hours. Because if we look up here into the number of trips, it's saying it's going to take 2 trips. And that's based on, if I pull this over a little bit, in the background you can see that my total cubic space for the job is 1,468. And so based upon what I typed in for auto, it's 2 trips. You can use the calculator to base it too. If your truck's only that big and maybe you want to make it in 1 trip, it gives you some information and feedback so that if you want to go rent a bigger truck or whatever your needs are, you can see it. But like I say, even if it says 2 trips and you're like, it's probably going to take more like 3, or maybe you can jam it in 1, you can simply change it to 1, and then it redoes its calcs. Anytime you type in anything, it recalcs. So you have the ability to kind of go back and forth and see different scenarios. Same difference on the calc fuel charge. Since I checked it, down here under fuel charges, it gives me a number, and then it's based on this total mileage, based upon the numbers you put in at the top. Ultimately, it's going to subtotal up your miscellaneous charges. It's going to put it here. And then what you're seeing here where it says delivery cost and delivery hours, it's pulling that out of your estimate, because it looks through your estimate and finds every line that has that cost type of delivery, and it brings the cost in so that you can see what your total delivery cost is here in the window. Similar below that, down in installation, as you can see at the bottom, it similarly adds up your charges so you can see them in real time. And you can see out to the side of most of them, we put in extra information so that you can see what those are based on. So in other words, like this is saying it's going to take 6 days because we have 80 hours of installation. Plus, since you're not using a hotel, it means your guys are driving to and from the job site on a daily basis. The beauty of this is that you can start changing numbers to see what it does ultimately. Right now we're at almost $2,500, but maybe if you change the hours to 12 hours a day, obviously your amount's going to go down because your number of days is less. Or you could go in the opposite direction. Like, well, instead of having them drive to and from every day, what's the difference if I put them up in a hotel? Is it going to make this number cheaper or more? So I could check calculate hotel and then type in how much I want to figure per day. And then as you can see, because it's less travel time, so they're working more during the day, it's actually quite a bit less. And then similar to what it did inside delivery, it pulls in your installation hours from your estimate and its cost so that you can see the total cost down here at the bottom. One thing I do want to note, though, just the way the calculation engine is set up, is inside here you can check prevailing wage and after hours. So let's say this job's prevailing wage, and I'm going to add, I don't know, 50% to the unit cost. Even though I've changed it in here, you won't see any change here immediately. You have to click OK, close out, so that the estimate can recalc itself. and then right-click and come back in, and then you'll see the change down here under the installation cost based upon the percentage you put in there. So keep in mind, if you change these two things in here, you won't see any real-time changes until you close out and come back in. But just as you noticed, as soon as I clicked OK, if you made any changes, the estimate itself recalcs. All the miscellaneous charges that we just figured in, you'll see them on the summary node here under miscellaneous charges, but you only see it at the base bid simply because that's where they're kept. That's where we created it. And then you'll also see it on the cost types tab underneath miscellaneous installation and miscellaneous delivery. So now you'll see a few more breakouts over here. For those of you that were here yesterday, these pie charts, you can rotate them, which is a neat feature. Most of the time, you might think, why do you want to rotate them? But the time I found that it makes the most sense is when you have a lot of these labels in here and they're really close together. Sometimes as you rotate it, you'll get them to come apart a little so you can actually read them all. Just a little inside tip, I guess, for you. If you have a bunch of labels and you want to be able to read what they are, it's an easy way to do it. But like I mentioned too, on any estimate, you can create miscellaneous delivery and installation costs at the base bid, but you can also create them separately on each change order if you need to. So that if you had a change order, for instance, if we created a change order here, let me collapse these just so it's simpler to see. If I came up here and created a change order, and just call it change order number 1, and then I'll just copy a couple things into it just so it has something inside it. If you had a change order and you had a reason, maybe because there's enough stuff in here you need to add more of those miscellaneous charges, just like I did at the base bid, I can come down here and say miscellaneous install and delivery charges, and it brings up a separate calculator solely for this part of the quote. So that if you needed to add in any separate charges because the change order adds them, you could. Like I said, it's completely separate from what's in the base bid. It adds it into the change order itself. One last thing too is that if you create a miscellaneous node, so to speak, on a change order or base bid, if you want to get rid of it, there's also a remove down here. So if you had a reason to get rid of it, you certainly could. Oh, and hold on just a second, because looks like we got a little tie-up here. Back to our estimate. Okay. Lastly, once you have the miscellaneous charges put in there, it looks like we'll add them again because I didn't save it, so I didn't save them in there. Put them back in there so we've got them. The miscellaneous charges, if you add them to, on your document, it's going to print them separately for you automatically. So if we create a quotation document, whether or not you actually have this breakout and print, install, and delivery charges separate, just print in your typical document. At the very end, it's going to list your delivery and installation miscellaneous charges for you. So if we look at my estimate, which is pretty basic, I have a separate node for delivery and installation, but right here it's going to print out, here's your miscellaneous delivery and installation charges. It automatically sticks it on your quote for you. However, if you, like if I go in here and I'm just going to no print these two nodes, and if we go back to documents and you have the breakout, print and install delivery charges, it combines them inside there. So in other words, you'll see here at the bottom of the document, it'll just list delivery and installation charges. And it just includes the miscellaneous charges inside it. One thing to keep in mind, though, too, just like similar to the miscellaneous delivery and installation cost calculator, on documents, as Russ will go into it more, I think it's next Tuesday when that Lunch and Learn session is. If you select breakout delivery and install charges, it's only going to put the cost in here, not the sell price. But like I had mentioned before, in 7.1, the next version, which will come out in 30 to 60 days, that'll be fixed. So it'll all be sell price. All right. I think for the most part that kind of gives you an idea of the miscellaneous delivery and installation cost calculator. So now I'll just open it up for any questions you guys may have.
Hey, Dave. On
Yeah.
your quote you have opened up right now, the summary for delivery and install, did you manually type those in?
For these here? No. What I happen to have on this particular one is just a simple assembly, and inside it I have different labor rows that I might typically use. So that, for whatever reason, like I say, when it comes to delivery and installation, you can put them in separate little assemblies like this if that's your method, or you could hide them inside each assembly itself if you wanted to as well. So I just happen to have simple little assemblies here where I just typed in how much time I wanted to figure for the job.
So Dave, when you're doing alternates, it would report out a separate delivery and install cost based on that alternate as well. So it will do alternates, change orders, or base bids. Any of those would have a separate delivery and installation cost. That's the first part of the question. The second part is, could you break that number out into delivery and installation as separate line items, or does it just report it as one group?
I believe in the version as it's designed right now, it just records it as one group unless you use the option breakout delivery and install, but I think currently it just puts it in as a single line. But to answer your first question, yeah, you can have a separate one for base bid, alternates, and change orders. Does anybody have any other questions or maybe missed something since we had some audio problems at the beginning that didn't make sense of it all kind of correlating together? I'd be happy to repeat it if I didn't start back far enough.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
Can you go to that your entry form there for the delivery and install?
Yeah. This one?
Yeah. All right. On the hotels for the deliveries.
Uh-huh.
Is that going to, if you check that and put a value in it, is that going to add a hotel for every trip?
No, it's smart enough. Yeah, because even though it says 2 trips, like it says, it's based on one night because it's smart enough to know that if you put a hotel in there, they're going to stay until however many hours it is. Similarly, down on the install, just like if you look at travel time now, the hours is like 16.36, and it says number of nights is 4 based on the hours. But if you put in a hotel down here, it's going to tell you that here's the hotel charge, which is based on 3 nights. Because it knows based on the hours and the number of guys and the hours of the day you're going to work, this is how long it's going to take and how many nights. So that was the idea, that you could check it on and off and then look in real time what the charges equate to. And that's why we put this extra information here so you can see what these charges are based on.
On the delivery portion, where does it come up with the 8 hours of delivery when it has 5.45?
This is the travel time. That's the number of hours for travel time. The delivery hours itself, if I click OK, since this is a pretty simple estimate that I have, it's based right here because I typed it in. But just like I was saying, because this line has the cost type delivery on it, it doesn't matter where in your estimate it's located. I think, Dan, for you guys, if I'm not mistaken, you may figure load and unload on a per item basis, so it's figured inside each and every assembly.
Right.
It's still smart enough. It'll go through your entire quote, find all those rows that have this cost type, sum up all the labor hours, so that when you're in here, that's where it comes up with this number. So in this case, it would be for the entire base bid. It went through everything line by line and found all the lines with that delivery cost type and summed them up for you. So that for you, like I say, since you calculate it on a per item basis, you can easily see that, okay, with all the things we have in there, it's saying 10 hours or whatever it may be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just that 5.45 does that transfer, like if it gets converted into ShopPAK, does that transfer show up in hours anywhere, or is that going to be a miscellaneous cost?
It's going to be a miscellaneous cost on the job item, whichever one it's associated with. But like I say, this 5.45 hours comes from that it's 75 miles to the site, driving 55 miles an hour, so it calculates the time, plus the guys, and then how many trips. So. But yeah, all of these charges will come over into ShopPAK as miscellaneous.
So when we do our setup as far as the travel time, as far as the rates, we have to obviously put in our overhead burden plus profit to number in there.
Yeah, currently you do. Like I said, in a month or two that'll be fixed, so you'll actually be putting real costs in here. And I'm not sure if it's going to be in here. I imagine it'd probably be on the estimate settings or the global settings where you can actually set up a separate overhead percentage and profit percentage for them.
Okay.
So that it, I guess, in some degree functions like everything else does in ProjectPAK. It's just the first go-around, that was just our design. We went by cost, but like I said, with feedback, we're going to change that and fix it. The delivery hours, though, I mean, that's pulling it straight out of the estimate, so that'll come over if you have them as a labor. It'll come over just like it normally would, same with install. It's just these, I guess, 4 extra charges for each one would come over as a miscellaneous cost. The last thing to show you, I guess, that I thought of, you can also, I think it's on the miscellaneous tab, you can also map your cost type mappings here if you have custom line types, so that you can tell it whether it's material or labor. This doesn't necessarily affect the delivery and install portion, but it affects your cost type reporting on this tab, so that it can put the labor hours under the appropriate thing. So that just like here, installation, even though the line type up here is install labor, which is a custom one, it knows to put it under labor because that's how I mapped it. Is there any other questions?
Hey, Dave, just a comment regarding the new updated software. Hopefully in one of the future sessions, could you go over the find option? I've been playing with that, and the more I use it, the less I know about it.
Yeah. Certainly. I can go over them now if there aren't any other questions on miscellaneous. But installation and cost, just because it's different. We ran out of time, I guess, yesterday, because I didn't want to go over the half hour for the first part, but if everybody else wants me to, I can go over find real quick right now if you like. And like I say, all of these are being recorded and put on our site, but as well, just as for those of you that have used the TradeSoft and Scheduler video tutorials, once we get everything settled in ProjectPAK and kind of get ahead of the support game here, we're going to be making video tutorials for ProjectPAK as well. Is anybody opposed to going through the find feature now? Even though it's kind of outside of the scope for today. If there's no more questions on delivery and install, I can go ahead and do a short, like, little short session on find.
That's fine with us.
I'm using you come on. This wasn't this presentation.
All right. Well, if there aren't any more questions on that, like I say, I can just go over it real quick. It's if any of you ever used our old find function, you could do quite a bit with it. We've just expanded it a little bit, but it's quite a bit different because it's technically still called find, but when you open it, it's called find/change. So the biggest difference is that you can set it up by scope, because you could have just selected a certain selection and you want to find something in there and change it possibly. But the drop down is similar. There's just more things depending upon what you want to find. So in our instance here, let's say we just want to find the line types of the type material. I can just click the binoculars to say find, and it's going to find all, in this case, because I said group results, it's going to find each unique item in the estimate. If you don't group it, it's going to list every single line by line for material. And things that are exactly the same, like all these, will be listed separately because it's based on each line where it finds it in the estimate. So unless you have a specific reason, typically you probably want to group them. So that now, as you can see, if I scroll down, you can see that the 3/4 5x8 is now just one line down here, even though it's everywhere in the estimate. And if I'm going to move this over to my other screen just to show you, all I'm doing in it is clicking a line, like in this case, commodity white 4x8, even though you can't see it. If I click it, it jumps me to the first instance of it in my estimate. If I didn't group the results together, you could click each instance and it would jump you to that spot in the estimate so you could easily find it. If, however, you want to group them, and I'm trying to think of a reason, it's not really replace, but if you wanted to find something and change it. So let's do a different find, like if we go by, let's use the line type equals products, so that it'll find all of your products. And so now these are all your separate individual products. And if for some reason maybe, let's say, this is probably not going to be a great example, but let's say on all base cab 1 doors, I'm going to highlight this and click select. So in essence, it selects every instance of it in my estimate. And if I go to the change tab, it's now going to say, okay, what do you want to change about it? If you indeed wanted to change something. And maybe in my case, I wanted to change, what's a good one? Adjusted unit price. Maybe for whatever reason, I just wanted to change the adjusted unit price to $500. I can type that in and click change all. And then in my estimate, as you can kind of see, it's calculating in the background. It just changed all one door cabinets to $500. So if I close out of this, and I scroll over, you can see it put $500 in there. If I didn't group them all together, I could have picked and choose what I did. So the idea is that you can use it to find stuff, and then change it if you want to, or just simply find it. Like I say, if you just go to find and you're just truly interested in finding something, depending upon what it is, the whole idea is that when you click on one of these, like if I ungroup them, and it'll tell you like what its parent is. So maybe I want to find this. In the background, if I just pull it down, it highlights it where it's at in the estimate. So it went right to the node and highlighted the product. And it'll also do that, just like you saw if you go deeper. I'm trying to think of a different one that would be in here. If I go to hardware, select new, I pull this down and I just click on this one, it jumps to, it's like it's the second instance of it, and just jump to it and it expands it for you. So you can easily find it. And then, like I say, if you want to change what you've found, you simply can either hold your control key down and select multiple things, or if you were grouping it, you could have hit select, so it selects those, then go to change, and then change whatever it is that you're interested in changing about it. Does that help it a little bit more than when you were playing with it, hopefully?
Hey Dave, in the Find tab, there's a radio button called Current Context. Is that if you just like selected one node or something, or what does that do?
Yeah, like for instance, if I close out of here and maybe I know that something inside this soiled utility, I go to Find, and now it says Current Context because I right-clicked it from there. Anything that I select here, it's only going to find it within this context. It's not looking anywhere outside of it. So in this case, it just found all the hardware inside that context. The only difference is inside here you can say new search, which is typical, or like if I did this and then I wanted to add something else to it, I could merge the results or narrow them between the two. So it just depends on what you're trying to find and or change. So we just give you the ability to do it by scope. So just like if I changed it and said, nah, I want it on the base bid and hit it, it's going to find it everywhere else.
So the merge and the new, like on here you selected find the hardware, then you would change that to merge and say select material, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanted to change both of those items, is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So if I said merge, it should have now found, yeah, you can still see hardware here, but it has all the material and all the hardware too. So it allows you, similarly, like in the old world in 6.1, when you use the find utility, you could do it by line type and say, yeah, highlight hardware, or you find hardware, and then it highlights every row in your estimate of hardware, and then you could go right back into find, or you could actually still, while you're in find, you could then find like material and add it to it. It kept aggregating your selection. It's the same idea here, only we call it merge instead. But it's the same concept, so that if you had a reason that you wanted to highlight maybe all the hardware and all the material, and so now I could just say select all of it and change. Maybe I wanted to change whether it was getting sales tax or use tax or something in that neighborhood, or I don't know, change a GL account or whatever would make most sense, or anything in here you could change about that, or you could change something if you had a reason to. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Well, all right. I think looks like we're about to 2 o'clock my time, which means it's been about an hour. So I guess that kind of concludes our session for miscellaneous delivery and install. Keep in mind, too, if you have any other questions outside of this that hit you after the fact, feel free to shoot me an email or support. I'd be happy to answer it for you. But thanks for coming and listening, and good luck to you in 7.0, and hope I answered a lot of questions for you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
You're welcome.